Good noontide here at the OBX Wave Report. I am Robert Scribbler, your wave reporter on all things waves, weather, climate, and beach lifestyle. And today, right now, we've got some strong northeast winds blowing here at Mandio and Jeanette's Pier and regions northward. So conditions are getting choppy, longshore current picking up. So with that chop and slop, I've decided to take a little bit of a break today. Going to try and recharge my batteries a bit. Been on travel a lot, been doing a lot, and been struggling to keep up with all the things that I typically do here. Um, I'm also getting a doctor's appointment so that I can get some contacts to give me more visual acuity out there in the waves. Um, I haven't really used contacts while surfing all through the 44 years I've been in the water with bad eyesight, and somehow still manage to catch waves rather well, to see the waves coming in. But I'm pretty sure there's a lot of visual information that I'm not picking up. My eyesight isn't like horrible, but on my driver's license, I have the corrective lenses designation. I think I'm about 2120 or 2150 or something like that, but it's not great vision. And I think that having the added visual acuity will help get me some extra edge. And out here in the Outer Banks, I need all the edge I can get. So I'm going to go in, get my eye appointment, get myself set up for some contacts, and get in the water and see how some extra visual acuity helps, and see if I can level up my surfing one bit more. But for today, we'll take a little break. We've had 41 surf sessions out of an attempt at 150 so far for this year. Not quite on track, but we've been mostly surfing through the winter and been catching up to the totals that we need. We need an average of 3 per week. And lately I've been getting an average of about 4 per week. So we're a little bit ahead of schedule during recent months, but we haven't completely caught up. By the end of April and early May, I think we might be caught up to where we need to be, and then I'll be looking at trying to get ahead. But nonetheless, looks like wave conditions are going to be better tomorrow morning. So we're going to aim at getting into the surf tomorrow morning. Hopefully, I can. Lately, I've been getting up and just been like really tired and kind of dragging in the morning. So hopefully, I can get myself some good rest tonight and get up at a decent time tomorrow and then get ahead of the curve. So today, we're looking at more of a rest day for me. Okay. Let's get into the wave report today. And yeah, we've got northeast winds. Looks like 2 to 3, 2 to 4 foot waves mostly across the Outer Banks, but choppy and sloppy with those strong northeast winds. Swell expected to build throughout the day and be larger tomorrow, and then just generally build throughout the week. But before I get into the more detailed wave and weather report, I do want to highlight the messaging of a climate activist by the name of Hank Hadima. I'm sorry, Mike Hadima. I don't know where I got Hank from. Mike Hadima, who is a climate activist who works to campaign on issues addressing the climate crisis, building green jobs, and a Green New Deal. And there are so many of us right now working to promote clean energy and green jobs as a solution to climate change. This is the positive side of climate activism. And well, pretty much all of climate activism is a positive side. But if you're a climate activist, you're kind of confronted with a range of options when it comes to working for a better climate future. And one side of it, of course, is promoting clean energy and green energy in the form of wind, water, solar, and electric vehicles to outcompete the harmful fossil fuels that are now driving the climate crisis. But the other side of it is holding the fossil fuel industry accountable. The fossil fuel industry is not only the source of the climate crisis by continuing to work to extract the fossil fuels, bring them to market, and have them burned. But they are also a source of, unfortunately, a source of disinformation and an attack on science to varying degrees. Of course, not all fossil fuel industries are as bad acting as others. And in the worst case, you have fossil fuel industry linked to authoritarian petrostates like Russia and Saudi Arabia, which are bad actors on the global stage. But nonetheless, from one range of the fossil fuel industry to the other, you have a degree of culpability in the climate crisis. And here on the coastline, we are looking at rising seas and worsening storms that result from the attempts to monopolize the energy markets by fossil fuel industry and the attempts to keep people dependent on fossil fuels through, at the very least, lobbying campaigns, and at the very worst, authoritarian action by petrostate governments and those aligned with them. So the authoritarian action and the lobbying have the same goal. It is to capture people like you and me, in using harmful energy sources that harm our future. Um, and I focus on the climate crisis, but it also harms our future through pollution, increased deaths from things like lung cancer and heart attacks, and just all sorts of negative impacts to our lives and our world. So as I look at this quote from Mike Hadima, um, if you make 53,000, if you made 53,000 dollars a day or $20 million per year since Jesus was born, you would still not make the profit that Shell made in 2022. So that's a lot of profit from harm. And what Mike is saying here is it's time for Shell to stop drilling and start paying for the climate damage that they've caused. So I'm just going to ask this rhetorical question for you guys. Should fossil fuels be held accountable? Should they be held liable for the harm that they are inflicting now and for the harm that's coming based on the vast overburden of greenhouse gases that they have injected into the atmosphere? And if they do have liability, how much of that liability should go to helping to pay for climate action? And how much of that liability should go to helping to repair the damage done? All right, so that's just my preamble question, question of accountability. We need to hold bad actors accountable. If we do not hold bad actors accountable, then the problem of the harm that they cause only gets worse. And they are emboldened to double down on the harm that they have caused and to and then this results in greater and greater degrees of harm over time. So, yeah. So should we be holding fossil fuels accountable for the harm that they have caused and that they will cause over time? All right, so that's my preamble discussion for the OBX wave report. Let's get into the weather and wave discussion, and then we're going to look at some of the climate features and longer range wave forecasts as we usually do. And looking at the geocolor composite provided by NOAA, we have the beautiful picture of the clouds over the US, and we can see the frontal boundary draped from Texas all the way up to the US East Coast. And that's what's bringing in those northeast winds here in the Outer Banks. And generally, storms are going to get injected into the US Southeast through a trough, and they're going to translate offshore, and we're going to get more stormy conditions in the ocean and larger swells, which is pretty exciting to me. I'm excited. Yay, waves. We have had some pretty crazy squally conditions in the Gulf of Mexico. Yesterday there was this massive line of squalls out in the Gulf of Mexico, and we still have some thunderstorm type activity out near the Yucatan as a trailing feature of an impulse that just moved across the Gulf of Mexico and stirred up some major storms. We're not in hurricane season yet. I think if such a severe set of storms had pumped into the Gulf of Mexico during hurricane season, we might have been concerned that they might develop some tropical characteristics. But right now, fortunately, no discussion on tropical cyclone formation, just really powerful, crazy looking squalls moving across the Gulf of Mexico. And you can see those high cloud tops in association with some of those squalls near the Yucatan right now. Thunderstorms powering toward the Yucatan. Um, Crazy high cloud tops. And then, of course, you can see the thunderstorms firing over the tropics. So the tropics are starting to heat up in the sense of thunderstorm formation. Nothing in the way of cyclone development potential, at least that I've seen from the National Hurricane Center, but we're going to be keeping a weather eye to it. The ocean environments are much warmer than normal, and even though it's April, sometimes you can get a tropical cyclone forming, earlier than expected, especially with the new climate system that we are dealing with, where we have much warmer than normal ocean temperatures and higher potential for storm formation, particularly tropical cyclone formation. Excuse me, I got a cat here that wants to sit in my lap. Tropical cyclone formation. All right, so let's get down to the National Weather Service radar. You can see some storminess across the southeast, some little drizzly, squally storms off the Outer Banks, a few light storms in the central U.S., some storms coming in through the Pacific Northwest, and some storms lingering in the Northeast. Let's see. I would think that we would have some small craft advisories up across the Outer Banks, but we don't. I think we probably should with those northeast winds coming out of out of the northeast at 25 miles per hour, but not as yet. Maybe later. And let's see, is this updated? I believe this is updated. Okay, yeah, I'm just seeing um, some cooler weather advisories, also in association with the trough in the Appalachian zone and to the west. But overall, just stormier conditions across the U.S. Southeast. All right, so let's get down to our local wave observations. We're going to start out at Jeanette's Pier right now. The waves are in the range of 2 to 3 feet. I'm going to put a little plus sign beside that at Jeanette's Pier because we got those strong northeast winds coming in and they're helping to kick up the surf. Primary swell coming in at 6 seconds out of the southeast, still a primary swell out of the southeast as a 2-foot swell. Secondary swell, though, getting kicked up by that wind out of the northeast at 2.5 feet plus. I bet if I go down to the pier and get the wave buoy monitor, it's going to be larger. Looking at some of um, the surf observatory films, we're getting what looks like larger surf down there. But this secondary swell coming in out of the northeast at 4 seconds, that is a 2.5 foot plus swell. Winds out of the northeast at 25 miles per hour, that is an onshore flow. Air temperature is cooler with those northeast winds, 56 degrees Fahrenheit. Ocean water temperature is warming up to 60 right now officially on the wave monitors. I bet it's closer to 61, 62 right there at the pier. Weather conditions mostly cloudy, some drizzle today, strong northeast winds in the range of 15 to 25 miles per hour, high around 60. Now heading on south to Rodanthe. I'm sorry, we're going to head to Avon. All right, so heading on south to Avon, past Kennekeet, we've got 2 to 3 foot waves at Avon with a primary swell coming in out of the southeast at 7 seconds. That is a 2.5 foot swell. Secondary swell coming in out of the east northeast at 11 seconds. That is 1.5 feet. Winds right now out of the northwest as offshore. So calmer conditions at Avon right now. If you get down to Avon, you might have some better waves, some hollow waves. You got a little brief window now in the next probably 1 to 2 hours before those northeast winds start to arrive. Air temperatures 66 degrees Fahrenheit. Ocean water temperatures warming up to 69 down there at Avon. nearly 70 degrees. It's getting warm down there, and those warm waters are spreading toward the north. I was out there in upper 60s, maybe 70-degree water temperatures yesterday. Wore my full suit, didn't need hood, booty, or gloves. It was just really warm and really nice. Um, Weather conditions today mostly cloudy, some drizzle, winds shifting out toward the northeast at 15 to 25 miles per hour with gusts to 30 and highs in the lower 60s there at Avon. And then for our last observation at Buxton, we've got 2 to 3 foot waves with a primary swell coming in at 8 seconds. That is 2.5 foot swell out of the southeast, secondary swell 11 seconds, 1.4 feet out of the east northeast, winds out of the northwest at 6 miles per hour. So very light down there at Buxton right now. Again, might be some nicer wave conditions, and you do have that brief 1 to 2 hour window where you could get those better swells there at Buxton before those gnarly northeast winds come in and chop up the surf for you, turn those waves into big old mush balls. Um, and so, I would recommend getting out there if you have the chance. Air temperature right now also 66 degrees at Buxton. Ocean water temperature officially, according to the wave monitor, is about 69. I think it's probably warmer. Weather conditions today, mostly cloudy, some drizzle, wind shifting toward the northeast at 15 to 25 miles per hour, gusts to 30, and highs in the lower 60s. Okay, now getting to our climate and longer term weather forecast and wave forecasts. Right now, looking at the global climate system, we've got a global temperature anomaly of 0.38 degrees Celsius above normal. So warmer than normal across the globe. This is comparable to the 1981 to 2010 reference period, which is already warmer than normal. So much warmer than normal conditions across the globe today. And the hotspot, of course, has been the Arctic, and that is continuing right now. Right now, the Arctic is 1.392 degrees Celsius above normal with a big punch of heat right up there into the central Arctic. When I say heat, I mean warmer than normal temperatures. And if these warmer than normal temperatures persist through late spring and into early summer, we're going to have to watch the sea ice. Right now, though, much warmer than normal conditions for the Arctic. We might have to do a supplemental look at sea ice. We're going to have to check out what Zach Labe is doing over on Twitter and see how the sea ice is doing. Um, Other major regions, tropics are heating up to nearly 0.5 degrees Celsius above normal. That's expected to continue as we head toward El Nino. El Nino signature showing up in the atmosphere with these warmer than normal temperatures off the west coast of South America. And then the Antarctic now edging back into above normal conditions. So we have no major regions of the world with cooler than normal conditions. This graphic indicator of global temperature anomalies where it's hotter than normal and cooler than normal provided by Karsten Haustein, who is a climatologist and an observer of the global climate system. Please check him out. Okay, so looking at some of the longer term predictions for temperature and precipitation in the 6 to 10 day outlook provided by NOAA, we expect to see below normal temperatures focusing on the Mississippi River Valley. This is indicative of a trough. Trough is expected to inject storms into the U.S. Southeast, and these storms are expected to intensify off the U.S. East Coast, which is one of the reasons why here in the Outer Banks we expect better waves over the coming weeks for over the coming days. For the next 6 to 10 days, precipitation outlook, we expect above normal precipitation for the northeast parts of Florida and parts of New Mexico, Colorado, and Texas, and then strand of below normal precipitation moving from the Pacific Northwest across the northwestern tier of the United States and down into the central U.S. Looking at the quantitative prediction forecast, we get a sense of where the storms are most likely to form. And you can just see that it's here in the southeast and off the eastern seaboard and in the Gulf of Mexico. So we're going to have to keep an eye on the potential for storms for the east, the southeast, and just offshore in the Gulf of Mexico and in the Atlantic Ocean. Looking at the convective analysis, let's get to today and we don't really have too much in the way of thunderstorms expected for most of the United States, but we do have a potential for some supercell thunderstorms, severe thunderstorms for parts of Florida. So we're going to have to keep a weather eye to Florida as that frontal boundary might heat up in central and southeast Florida. We've had like major storm events in these regions recently, particularly a 1,000-year flood that hit southeast Florida, and so we'll just have to keep an eye out for severe weather for southeast Florida if severe weather does threaten. And please pay attention to your local emergency management folk and weather experts. But if severe weather does threaten, please um, take measures to preserve life and keep yourself safe. All right. And then heading on to, let's see, this is day one, looking at day two. For tomorrow, we have a risk of severe thunderstorms for East Texas. So we'll have to keep a weather eye out to those potential conditions. And then, let's go back to, looking at day three, also East Texas under the gun for severe weather. So multiple day chance of severe weather across parts of the Southeast. Again, please pay attention to your local weather folk and emergency management folk if you reside in any of the threatened areas. Okay, looking at the global forecast system model, we can see the signature of the front sweeping in across the US East. I'm going to go ahead and advance this model so you guys can see what's expected to happen throughout today and into tomorrow. Some storminess across the Southeast, particularly into Florida, and then thunderstorms forming later in the day in Texas and Oklahoma in association with a low pressure system that is expected to slowly track eastward. And then as we get into Wednesday, more thunderstorms and showers across the Southeast, again focusing in on Texas. And then as we get into Thursday, the system moves eastward. And by Friday, the energy translates toward the US Southeast and Gulf coasts as we get into Friday with what looks like a potential for a lot of storminess and severe weather running up from the Gulf and through the US Southeast. And I'm going to go ahead and change the model run to the previous because I want to look out toward the future a bit more. And we haven't had that most recent model run fully loaded. So running the model through Saturday, we see the energy move offshore more into late Friday and early Saturday. And then storm forms offshore on Saturday, flinging some stormy weather back at the US East Coast, but it's expected to linger offshore and slowly strengthen as it moves toward Bermuda and out into the shipping lanes. Generally speaking, though, stormy conditions over the next few days, over the next week, and then we're looking at bigger waves in coordination with those stormy conditions. And right now, waves in the near offshore environment already pumping up to a 4.5, nearly a 4.5 foot swell with those northeast winds. By tomorrow, wave heights just generally in the range of about 4 feet with swells orienting from the east, moving from east to west, facing the shores, better waves tomorrow, and then good waves on Wednesday as well with a 4-foot swell and that positive orientation. Looking at Thursday, it just continues. And then into Friday, we start to get the influence of that coastal storm that is expected to form. Looks like more southerly and southeasterly winds, but these will translate back toward the northeast by Saturday. Larger swell on Friday with looks like 6.5, maybe some 7-foot swells just offshore. But it does look like Friday might be a good day as we might get some westerly winds before we get those strong choppy northeast winds. So thank you for joining me for this session of the OBX Wave Report. We did talk a little bit about climate action and holding bad actors accountable at the start. And I would like to ask you guys to please do everything you can to help speed the transition to clean energy. A Green New Deal would really, really help. And honestly, I think that with the intransigence of the GOP in Congress just obstructing anything that's helpful to Americans, we might need to start moving with Green New Deal type policies at the state level, even as we continue to push for a national Green New Deal type policy across the United States. It is worth noting that the Biden administration has done a lot to accelerate the pace of clean energy through the Inflation Reduction Act. But with climate crisis so imminent right now, and with harmful impacts ramping up, we need to also ramp up our action on climate. And in order to do that, we're going to have to overcome some horrible political influences and some really bad policies. Um, so yeah, so please do everything you can to help speed the transition to clean energy. Clean energy being right now the rapidly deployable clean energy is wind, water, solar, and electric vehicles. And let's do it. Let's get it done. Let's get carbon emissions down as low as we possibly can, and then get it to net zero and net negative, and do the carbon drawdown things, because we're going to have to do those things if we're going to save our coastlines um, and preserve our coastal communities and the nearby coastal areas. 60% of us live within 75 miles of a coastline, so that's most of us, dudes. Let's do it. All right. So thank you for joining me, and I will be back with you shortly. And hopefully, I'll have some eagle eyes to head out in the waters with me soon. So thanks once again.